Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about 5 ways to learn to trust yourself to get unstuck without certainty. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again for this week's episode, which is about coaching you on 5 ways to learn to trust yourself and get unstuck without certainty. This is super important, especially in midlife, and you know what? In all parts of your life. Today, you'll be putting some more tools in your invisible mindfulness tool belt. Mine is pink. I don't know about yours. I actually have a pink tool belt, believe it or not. Now, this episode is for you if you're ready to get unstuck and move forward already. But just quick, before we dive into that, I have another free gift for you. It's perfect for you when you think you might need a change or you're curious about feeling stuck, but you're just not sure what to do or where to go next to make things happen in your life. It's super helpful because you will discover the top 12 obvious signs that you're ready for an exciting change in midlife. You'll learn why you're not doing what you really want to do. You'll understand why it's important to think about what you want and make that exciting change. And you will also learn how to make sure that you take the next steps to regret-proof your life. So many of us feel stuck and confused, but don't know if making a change is the answer or not. The first step is understanding what's going on and why you're feeling the way you do. No one should waste their valuable time on this planet feeling afraid and having regrets. This free guide is called the 12 Obvious Signs You're Ready for an Exciting Change in Midlife, and it's waiting for you at www.susierosenstein.com/12 signs, the number 12. You can download it there. Enjoy. Okay, now let's dive in. We are talking about 5 ways to learn to trust yourself to get unstuck without certainty. My amazing woman in the middle. I know that you probably love getting all of your ducks in a row. You love a good comprehensive list and the ability to feel clear about the steps and know with a fair bit of certainty or 100% certainty that you can go down the list and tick things off tickety-boo. You are not alone. You love certainty. I love certainty. We all love certainty. But there's the rub. Not much is certain. When you're stuck, you want to get unstuck, but you don't know what you want. I hear this all the time. I don't know what I want, and I don't know how to get there. So you got to go slow. You got to slow things down a bit and really think about what you're craving. What's your true desire? And what is certainty exactly? Well, here's the definition: the quality of being reliably true. The quality of being reliably true. I am sure you would agree. You've experienced things you thought were certain and weren't. I sure have. One of the more shocking examples is when there's a freak accident and someone dies. That's been really shocking for me. I'll never forget being at work and getting the message that one of my colleagues was in a terrible crash on her way to work that morning and didn't survive. Things as simple and straightforward as driving to work can't always be certain or reliable. I also remember when there's a really slippery part of my drive when I used to commute to my job. And I was, it was bad weather and I slid. Somebody slid into me and then I slid into somebody else. And it was like a really big thing. That wasn't certain that morning. Or maybe you had a dream job that went south. I heard about that recently from a potential client. Or a friendship that surprised you in a negative way. Or a marriage that ended. Or even all the weird stuff during COVID that we thought of as certain, like kids going to school. Those kinds of things, they just were no longer certain. I think you get my point. I'm sure you have your own examples. And then think about what is getting in the way. Well, fear is typically the problem, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Fear of making mistakes, fear of failure, fear of trying something new, fear of judgment, fear all over the place. I have a feeling you are quite familiar with fear. Personally, I was shocked at how fear kept me stuck for 5 years. Between 45 and 50, that's 260 weeks of my life. I've done several episodes exploring this fun emotion, so please check out the show notes for more information about those episodes if you would like to listen. Fear will pretty much keep you stuck and in a spin. You know, the should I or shouldn't I routine? All the while imagining worst-case failure scenarios that keep you in a challenging emotional state because of your likely passion for perfectionism. It all goes together. So when it comes to making plans about your future, this desire becomes louder and louder. You want to get unstuck. You want to make a change. You want to be clear about your priorities. You want a guaranteed plan for your future, one that's full of success, fulfillment, and happiness, all wrapped up in a Tiffany blue bow, please, and thank you very much. As challenging as all of this sounds, there is good news too. Learning to trust yourself more is part of the plan forward, and you can learn this skill or get better at this skill for sure. So here's the secret. Having a giant plan isn't necessary. You don't need dozens of steps in your plan that take you down the path to your next decade or two. That's based on you believing there is a guaranteed plan forward based on a foundation of certainty. And it's not possible. But what is possible is, drumroll please, your ability to feel more confident about your next best step forward. And that, my friend, will set you free of stuckness and on the road again to living your life and growing forward. The idea here is to really appreciate that the certainty we desire is about a clear and complete plan forward. But it is so unrealistic to think about your plans this way for many reasons. So let's dive in and let me explain. First, as I mentioned, certainty, it's kind of like an illusion. You want to believe that as an older and wiser woman, you can come up with a big, giant, amazing plan forward. Kind of like when you were in your 20s and 30s and made decisions that set you on a path for the next few decades. You know, like marriage, kids, your career, your home, those sorts of things. But as we all know, now you're older and life is unpredictable. More than ever before, you can't control all the elements, especially external elements of the plan. And as you probably guessed, I'm not talking about your financial plan for your retirement. Although there might be some uncertainty there too, but I'm talking about midlife next chapter sorts of stuff. Like, what's your next job? Is it time to retire? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? What's your reimagined life going to look like when you have an empty nest? What is that retirement chapter going to look like? How do you want to design your life after a big milestone birthday like 50 or 60? All those examples. And again, your plan doesn't have to be perfect or complete. It's not necessarily about the quality of the plan either. That's not important all of the time. Other things can happen. I remember this so clearly one time back in the 80s when I was on a provincial committee to help with tobacco use awareness. Every year we planned a big community event for National Non-Smoking Week. We had a really successful event the year before, and we learned a lot, so we had more confidence going into the event that year. Well, two big things happened. First, it was beyond freezing cold, like minus 20 Celsius, and we had an outdoor event planned at an ice skating rink. It was so cold that my camera actually broke. Crazy cold. And this, of course, affected the turnout. The other thing was that a war broke out somewhere in the world, and that affected the media coverage. A lot happened that we couldn't control, and let's just say that our results were not impressive that year. The other thing about clarity is that if you don't check in on all your beliefs and desire for certainty, you may not really understand why you're stuck. Waiting for full clarity and certainty keeps you stuck. Making decisions and moving forward gets you unstuck. When you're digging around up there in your brain, I wonder what you're thinking. I wonder what thoughts you're finding. Perhaps it's something like this, super simple. I need certainty. Is that the way you think? I don't know. This kind of thought sounds good on paper, but is it really? Maybe in some situations, but most of the time, it will probably just create feelings like doubt, fear, and maybe hesitancy. Those feelings aren't really great for fueling intentional action. And there you go, Stuckville. You're in Stuckville. You can play with a variation on this thought, though. Maybe something like, I'm learning that I don't need everything to be certain to move forward. Notice the way you feel. Is it a more useful emotion? Something better than doubt, fear, and hesitancy? If so, it's also a more useful thought. Okay, step 2, listen for desire whispers and hints. Now that you've taken a look at certainty, let's talk a bit more about determining what it actually is that you want. I don't know about you, but for me, when I was stuck in my mid-40s, I did not believe that I could get myself unstuck. I just didn't believe it. I really believed that my smart friends had a better sense of what I really wanted and what I should do. It was kind of like the answer was outside of myself, outside of my own personal knowing. Now, don't get me wrong, you probably have people in your life who love you and know you quite well. They can absolutely give you feedback and insights into some of the things that they see about you that you may not see yourself. But if you don't have the belief that you can trust yourself to know what your heart wants, you're missing out on some important gold because it's the real you. The goal here is to listen for desire whispers and hints. What is a desire whisper, you might be thinking? Well, I think of it as like a soft, tiny suggestion that you notice you're thinking, but you might not really hear it, like you might only sense it. So you have to really listen carefully, and that means cranking up your ability to notice more. You have to really listen and notice. That should help. And when you notice it, don't close it down. Instead, be curious and lean in. And that means asking yourself a few questions about what you're actually sensing. Maybe these. It's kind of like you have to talk to yourself. Interesting. What was that? What thought did I just notice or sense? And then pause to think it through. You may even want to write it down. Then something like this. Why is this what I want? Does it make sense that I want more of this in my life? Is there another time in my life that I had some of this or was happy doing this? What would it be like to have more of this in my next chapter? Do I know anyone else who has this? What do I think about that? Those kinds of questions. And I remember exactly when I did this once very effectively. It was in that stuck period I mentioned earlier in the podcast a couple of times. In my mid-40s, I was getting so frustrated. It was driving me crazy that I was spacing out and didn't have a clue. So I sat down at my desk at my job and I just got really quiet and I allowed myself to just sense it, just let my mind float and to notice subtleties. And I found it. It was this sense that I wanted to work closely one-on-one with people. I wanted to have relationships with people be part of my work. And that's what came through. Now, at that point, I had no clue what I was going to do with that, but I could tell that that was different than what I was currently doing at my work and what I was attracted to early on in my education. And that's what I ran with ultimately. I got really curious about that. I thought about, why I chose certain programs in school and what courses I really liked and when I had it in my life that I liked it. And when I noticed other people doing things that had this, how curious I was about what they were doing and why. So those are the kinds of questions, but you have to find that little hint or whisper because there's real gold there. And then one more quick tip. There's one of my favorites. It's super simple. It's the lottery question. Just ask yourself, what would you do if you won $2 million? And then quick, you got to notice the first thought. And you have to be curious about that first thought. Like, don't poo-poo it down. Notice what happens. And to poke around, ask yourself, what would I do if I won $10 million? What would I do if I won $500,000? But I find that you have to go a little higher with crazy amounts. I mean, they're all crazy amounts. But you have to go with really big to really get your mind going because then you just open up a little bit more. It seems freer the bigger the amount is that you're going to play with. So when I play that game, it's always similar. It's always something about living in a tropical place with tons of wildlife, marine life, and gardening. Like there's ocean, it's lush, and I'm so happy to be outside. So there's whales for sure. And I'm always thinking about turtle tagging in Costa Rica. Those are the things that always come to mind. So I'd love to know what comes to mind for you. And remember, you don't have to know exactly what you're going to do with whatever insight you have or whatever whisper you hear. But it's new data and you can learn from it. It's just a starting point. And that brings us to step number 3. Think about fear differently, kind of like fear as a guide rather than something that stops you, right? Like a sign on the road versus a mountain in the middle of the road. Think about it. Is there ever growth without fear? Have you ever grown forward without being afraid? And in midlife, are you even trying lots of new things anymore? Many of my clients say that they aren't. You kind of get out of the practice of being a beginner. You probably had a lot more experiences as a newbie when you were younger. And it's super common to feel afraid when you try something for the first time because of all of the uncertainty. You might fear the unknown. Not everyone experiences this to the same degree, but it makes sense. And it's how we're wired. It's kind of like a natural survival instinct kind of thing. But ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? What are you thinking that is causing fear? Are you thinking something about being judged? Are you worrying about failing? Do you think you're going to get hurt physically or emotionally? Maybe you're afraid of actually being successful. Is it judgment, what others might think about what you're doing or how you're doing it? Or maybe you're worried that you're going to make a mistake or that you've gone the wrong way, you've made the wrong decision, or that you can't even cope with your decision, like whatever's going to come up as a result of the decision. What is it for you? Think about fear. If it's natural to experience fear when you try new things, what if you just focused on your personal growth and happiness? If it's just a natural part of what's going on, maybe it doesn't deserve a lot of thought. I don't know. What if fear of failure just meant you have an opportunity to learn? What if you accepted that you can't control what people think about you, fear or not? You just can't control what somebody else is going to think. What if you just became aware of fear and embraced it as another tool to guide you, like we talked about being guided on the road, but not necessarily stop you, like you're going to do it anyway, even though you're a little nervous? That was kind of like me with tap dancing. When I started tap dancing again a few years ago, I was afraid. I was worried about judgment. I was definitely nervous about being a beginner. And quite frankly, I was a little afraid I might fall, right? Because it seemed slippy to me. And some of those things you do are a little tricky and you're jumping and moving around and, so I was a little afraid of falling. Anyway, I went anyway, and it was lots of fun. So I like to think of fear as something that happens for me. That's another tweak, a way to reframe. And then I get curious about it. If it's happening for me, if I know right off the bat there's something I can learn from it because I think about it that way, it's easier to be curious. So think about that. Okay, now step number 4, trust yourself with your next best step. My friend, if you are a regular listener of the Women in the Middle podcast, you may have heard me talking about the next best step strategy before. It's something that I coach on frequently in my group, the Women in the Middle Academy, and it's something that many of my podcast guests will mention related to how they got unstuck. I think the next best step is a game changer. The idea is that doing one thing is the next best step, and you get to determine what that one thing is. It actually doesn't matter because the way you take this next best step is the same way you continue to make progress. It's more important to do one small thing than nothing. Also, the next best step can actually be part of your discovery plan. The reason is not just that you're going to learn stuff about what you're doing, but my amazing friend, you will also learn something about yourself. That is, you learn about you in the act of doing the thing. So ask yourself this: how is it even possible to make decisions about stuff and roll out a plan when you don't have any relevant new data? I think about this all the time. You have to leave your house. You have to start thinking about the thing. You have to start doing the things related to the thing, whatever they are. So if you're trying to get unstuck and you're toying with an idea of what you think you want to do, how are you going to know? You need new data. And I wasn't making such a joke about leaving your house. You got to get out and try stuff, right? You have to talk to people. You have to allow yourself to respond and react to your new data. This is how you see what you're thinking and how you're feeling about leaning in to this new direction. This phase is greatly enhanced by you embracing being a beginner and being uncomfortable. It's all okay. All of the cool kids are doing this. This is what's happening. So then when you get out there, out of your house, even if you just tell one person what your idea is, then you can assess, interpret, and take the next best step. So I don't mean just leaving your house. I mean trying new things, going new places. Like if somebody asks you to go to a networking group, maybe you'll say yes. If somebody asks you to go to a movie that you wouldn't normally go to, maybe you'll say yes. Somebody asks you to go with them to a place that's like a new place an hour away. You say yes. So you just start to say yes to more things, and you can also think about things that may help you get more information about what it is you want to do, and expose yourself to more of these opportunities to assess how you're feeling and what you're thinking when you're in these situations. You are assessing, interpreting, and taking the next best step, and you're going to get suggestions. You are going to have new ideas. It's going to happen. So I hope you see what I mean here. By focusing on a big plan and not a small little bite-sized piece of your idea for a plan, you are actually making it harder. You're not being present, focused, and connected, and not allowing yourself time to respond and react to your new experience. You'll be surprised what you can learn from one conversation with a new person, clicking on something online that's interesting and related, reading a book somebody recommended to you, or watching a documentary that sheds more light on what you're interested in. Great ideas will keep coming, and your mind will keep working on figuring out what the plan is going to actually look like. I think this next best step strategy is a very good thing. Remember, you don't need the whole plan, just the next best step that feels aligned. Do that. Check your beliefs about doing a small thing. Small actions create clarity. Clarity doesn't come first. How could it? You probably don't have new data and you don't have your personal piece of the puzzle, which is you responding to your next best step. A quick example that I've coached on in my academy is about your pre-retirement plan. This is when your retirement is on the horizon, maybe 1 or 2 years away, and you start to think, what do I want for my retirement plan? What will my lifestyle look like? How will I stay busy for the next 20 years or so? And I would say, eek, too much, too big, too scary. Instead, start by researching one idea that whispered to you instead of trying to figure it all out. Like if you've been curious about pickleball, maybe take a class. And if you're playing pickleball and are curious about having more of it in your life, maybe have a discovery call with the pickleball coaching organization and see what's involved. Or check out joining a league and getting more involved. You don't have to plan everything, and you don't have to make a long, involved plan, but making one decision that feels like your next best step can be incredibly revealing and helpful. Okay, here we are. Step number 5, practice slowing down and being more present. When you are rushing through life, it is hard to slow down. You probably know that being more present is important, but it's not happening for you. There are lots of reasons for this, but a big culprit is likely your focus on being productive. This is super common for midlife gals. Slowing down is one of the most important things you can do if you're trying to get unstuck without certainty. Trust in yourself can grow when you are more present. One reason is because you get to know yourself better. It's real. You have a better handle on noticing what you're thinking and feeling. It's here and now. This is quite different than worrying about all of the what ifs and everything that you can't control in the future. The other thing you can work on is to be curious about how easy it can be for you to focus on your goals more than your journey or experience. Now, I really want you to appreciate this. It's usually easier for us to focus on and put more weight on our goals than our journey, like our journey to get there, our experience of getting there. So what would it be like for you to appreciate the clarity and skill development phase of your journey as much as the goal attainment phase? The skill development part is way longer than actually attaining your goal. What if you had more fun with it? What if you actually found joy during that phase? So I've done that with this podcast. Hitting 1 million downloads was a big deal. Attaining that goal lasted minutes or even seconds, but getting there took about 5 years. So imagine if I wasn't finding joy in creating the podcast and talking to you here, sitting by myself, talking to myself at my desk. If I didn't find joy in thinking about topics and interviewing people and, sitting here and actually having the commitment and persistence, the discipline to do this. And at the time of this recording, this is episode 398, right? I've been at this for 7.5 years. If I didn't appreciate and enjoy that part of it, it would have been a drag because hitting the goal was so fleeting. Do you follow? The skill development part is way longer than actually attaining your goal. I also remember appreciating this with needlepoint projects. If you only focus on finishing the project, and as you know, if you do anything with textiles or any kind of art or anything with needlepoint, it can take forever to finish these projects. If you only focus on finishing the project, each stitch will be way less enjoyable. And you will find yourself rushing through rather than developing the patience and skill and joy of getting better at the consistency of great needlepoint. Slow down and be present. That's the way to enjoy your life. Same with pretty much any goal. As podcast guest and author of the book, The Practicing Mind teaches, make the process the goal and use the overall goal as a rudder to steer your efforts. Let me repeat that. It's so powerful. Make the process the goal and use the overall goal as a rudder to steer your efforts. Anyway, when you get to the goal, you'll just make another one. You'll push it farther out. So when you only focus on the goal for a sense of accomplishment and happiness, you will also experience a lot of discontentment. One of the things I do in my academy is teach mindful doodling as a way to cultivate present moment awareness and present moment functioning. I love bringing more awareness to this whole topic because, as you know, as a midlife gal, you're really busy. Too busy to slow down. At least that's what you think. That's what I think too. I have to really work on it, and we can work on this together. So there you go, 5 ways to learn to trust yourself to get unstuck without certainty. Here they are again. Step number 1, appreciate there is little certainty in life. Number 2, listen for desire whispers and hints. Step 3, think about fear differently, kind of like a guide rather than a full-out stop. Step number 4, trust yourself with your next best step. And step number 5, practice slowing down and being more present. Trusting yourself, getting better at making decisions, and getting better at making plans for your next chapter. It's just a process full of skills that you can learn. Start with slowing down, being more mindful and aware, getting in touch with what you really, really want, and taking the next best step, and you'll get there. This is a great way to regret-proof your life. Okay, that is it for this episode. The Women in the Middle podcasts are all about how to love your life again after 50 and be more intentional about your life overall. The focus is on coaching you to incorporate mindfulness as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. I can help you create the success you're looking for because life is just too short to waste time feeling stuck and thinking about what you can't do instead of what you can do. That's why I created the Women in the Middle Academy with you in mind, because it's a warm, supportive, fun community of like-minded women who embrace the gift of aging and grow forward together. It's totally possible to feel great about your roadmap to a more fun, meaningful, and regret-free chapter. I want this for you too, so let's talk about it and see if the Academy makes sense this year for you. Apply and let's have a conversation about what your roadmap is going to look like. Book your free, no-obligation momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com. There are exciting new bonuses too that you are not going to want to miss. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 398. You'll also see links there for my new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, and I bet you'll like that too. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.